All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Nourishing Hope Book Club. We are studying The Power of One by Ed Mylett. This week, we are focusing on chapters 3 and 4. So I'm super excited to tackle these with you. You guys probably know there was a ton of content in here. And so I'm going to try to be very mindful of paring down whatever I can with some of my takeaways. But I thought because both chapters, I mean, they do build on one another, but yet the topics were quite different from one another too. So I thought for something a little bit different tonight, I would just maybe give a quick summary of chapter 3. We'd take some time to discuss that, like, 10-ish minutes or whatever. And then I'll do the same thing for chapter 4. And then we'll kind of break it up a little bit that way tonight. Okay. So chapter 3 was all about one more try. And I think a really great way to sum up this chapter was just with the very first sentence that he shared. And he says, if you ever want to achieve anything meaningful in your life, the strategy you must master is one more try. And I think that's so true. You can think about that probably in a myriad of situations in your life. And he really said, this is the overarching concept that links to so many of strategies in this book. So I think this is a really key chapter to really dial into. He talked quite a bit about compounding and how, that compounding effect takes place when you attempt one more try, just time and time again, right? And so when you take on that one more try mentality, essentially what you're going to do is just create and compound more wins for yourself. Then all of those wins are compounded to just create those significant long-term changes in your life. I also love, this reminds me of some of the books that we've read. I think, is it The Power of Thinking Big? I might be thinking of the wrong one. But this quote, he says, when you act and do the same things as everyone else, you'll get the same results as everyone else. But when you implement this one more mentality or one more try mentality, that's where you're going to find the greatest successes and your most significant personal growth. And I think this is so true. Another really great benefit from this whole one more try mentality is it just creates more confidence in general. And even talks about it, in comparison to your competitors, the people that may be marketing a similar product as you are, because when you know that you are willing to do more than they are, it's just going to breed more confidence in you automatically. Okay. The other really critical component that he talked about to this whole one more try mentality is it's not just trying one more time. You also have to be really intentional about looking for opportunities in everything that you do. And the good thing is if you practice that enough, eventually that just becomes second nature. You don't have to think so hard about it, and I've really noticed this in myself just with network marketing in general is I think just in life, I'm so much more aware of my surroundings and the people I'm talking to, and I'm kind of dialing in, listening for certain things that they're saying that might, lend the conversation to me offering a solution to a problem that they're having or whatever it may be. But I just really notice it is becoming a lot easier the longer that I'm doing this. Um, he also talked about how we all have wisdom inside us to create the future that we want for ourselves. But he also noted that so many people block that part of their identity and they just accept something less. And I think something that's come out of all of this for me is I have this passion now to help people break through those self-limiting boundaries. I just hate to see people settle for mediocre. And so that just reminded me of that so strongly there. Um, all right. One more big thing from this chapter I loved was that whole illustration of busting open the piñata. Who else loved that? Like that makes so much sense. I thought it was so good. Because he said sometimes there's really no external evidence that we're making progress when we've been hitting, it feels like we've been hitting something over and over again, or like nothing's happening. And he said that's often why people quit before they get to that part of their lives where the candy comes out. And so it's really all of those hits that just add up because whether we can see it or not, there is invisible progress that's being made in your life. But the sad part is that most people just don't stick around long enough to realize the outcomes from that invisible progress. And this has reminded me so much of not only people who start the business with us, but people start the products with us. It's like we talk about this all the time, and we know you can't see the changes going on in the inside, but they're happening. You've got to trust the process and recognize that every single day take your supplement is going to add up to something. And then that candy is going to fall out and all of those bigger health victories are going to be revealed. So I just loved that. And then to wrap up that chapter, one more quote that I really loved. Page 45, he says, you must tune out. He's talking about sticking with your piñata long enough. So he says, you must tune out all the naysayers and all the negative distractions to focus on busting your piñata wide open. You'll feel disoriented at times. Doubt may creep into your mind, and you may think that your goal is not worth it. Who's ever felt those things? Until you learn how to win those battles, you'll never enjoy what your piñata holds for you. If you stay with it long enough, you will enjoy the fruits of your labors, and everyone else in your circle who sticks around and supports you will enjoy those things as well. I thought that was so, so good. So anyway, there were a few more things from there, but I want to be mindful of our time and give you guys a chance to chime in here. So what are your favorite takeaways and thoughts from chapter 3?
I loved on page 48, the highlighted part, your greatest gains and success happens when you push yourself to new places and new limits. We don't grow if we stay in the same place, right? And the only reason how we can grow and not stay in the same place is if we gain somewhere, if we go beyond where we're comfortable. This chapter really hit home the one more try, because kind of embarrassed to say this, but anyways, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. So I went to school to be a teacher in elementary education, and you have to take a whole bunch of exams, right? I can't tell you the amount of times I had to take a certain section of an exam. I kept failing it. I couldn't pass it. And instead of being down on myself and giving up, I would say, okay, one more time. And finally that got me to, my degree. And then, now look at me, I'm not even using it, but hey, that's fine. But the point is, that just really kind of hit home with me. I don't know if it's because I'm stubborn or just didn't give up, but just the one more time, one more time, one more time. And I could have, and God knows the reason for why I did that, but I could have just said no way after the first, second time. So yeah, I don't know. That just kind of hit home for me with that. So.
And Liz, I was thinking about the same thing today. I was reflecting on how those experiences in life build grit, and how I'm reflecting on people that I'm trying to coach, and how oftentimes I'm like, what is it that scares people from this? Like, what is it that creates people to go on and keep trying for one more? What is it in me? I'm no different. It doesn't, you heard from people when we were watching people's posts this week, even in Hawaii, you don't really need a degree. You don't really need much of a skill set, right? But I think what happens is the people that keep going, and the people that are the ones that are going to keep trying, are the ones that would be the ones that are going to take one more, sorry, my kids are fighting, are the ones that are going to take one more step, are the ones that are going to, I think I trained for a 25K. I'm not saying you guys have to train for a 25K, but I never would have done that, but there was something in me that said, I got to try this, and that experience taught me I can do hard things. Even though they seem impossible, I showed myself I could do it. I didn't do a very good job. It took me like 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I did it, right? So that's what this book, I think, just really brings home, is like, those are the kinds of people we're looking for, are the people that are going to be willing to put one foot in front of the other. Are they going to be willing to keep hitting the piñata? Are going to be willing to not give up when when they get their first no, when they get their when their detox creeps in, when they're when when they got to trust the process. Um and so I think that I really liked this chapter because I thought it really brought in a lot of those thoughts of grit. Now I'm
Yeah, for me too. It's my favorite chapter so far, and one of my favorite chapters, in fact, of the whole book. Because like he said, if you don't have that one more attitude with being able to just get up off the floor and do it again, none of it matters. And all I could keep thinking about was the starfish story, where the little boy happened on the beach, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of starfish. And I look at my business in that way to either A, help people in their health, or B, help them in their finances. We can't help everybody, you guys. Not everybody is willing. Not everybody has worked on themselves to the point where they're open to keep hitting the piñata, but we can help some. And so the visual for me of one more try, of one more being that servant hearted, but of course we've got to be the one that emulates it. We have to be the examples of that one more mentality, and why working on our mindset is so crucial for when that meets the opportunity, when somebody is ready in our corner to keep hitting the piñata with us, or to keep saving those starfish that have beached themselves and are going to die without someone's help, physically die, mentally die, spiritually die, whatever that means for each individual. This chapter it almost brought me to tears in so many ways, because I feel like that's the thing we fight the most with helping people, is their unwillingness to give it one more try, their unwillingness to be coached, their unwillingness to listen to our advice, their unwillingness to commit to themselves. That's just one more try. But it's worth the effort. At the end of the day, it's worth the effort. When you see all of those starfish, you can walk away from all of them and say they're all bad, none of them are worth saving, or you can try for that one. And that's what makes all of this worth it, is that one person. Look, there's 12 of us on this call today, right? The ripple effect from just one. It's pretty cool.
I really like this chapter as well. I've listened to it a couple of times, and then I've been reading it as well. So when you hear him read it, it's really quite powerful. But yeah, but the piñata story, obviously, I've heard a couple of times now, and you always take something new from it each time you read it or listen to it. But it just kept penetrating me, saying, yeah, just one more time, you can't see what's going on in the inside. And I keep thinking, that personal growth. Okay, am I growing and helping somebody somewhere? Something's happening. And I feel like I'm that one person who hasn't given up. I'm not doing all the things. I know I don't do all the things that I should be doing, but I haven't given up. And and somewhere, I don't know if it was from the Hawaii stories or whatever it was, maybe it was team call the other night from you guys in Hawaii about no matter where you are in your rank, it doesn't matter if you're just helping somebody. And I don't know, it hit me today when I was seeing somebody, I don't remember who it was, that posted about a new join and how how excited they were to have them there. And I'm thinking, how excited are we every time we get somebody new? It's like the first person over and over again, because we're so excited that we've been able to do what God called us to do and to help one more. Yeah, so I don't. Yeah, it's a good chapter. The whole book's good.
Yeah, because life won't hand you opportunities, right? That's why we have to practice that one more mentality. We've got to make that choice. We preach about that all the time. It's a choice to be intentional about that one more try. And that whole last page on 52 about being intentional and being courageous. Because when you and that's most people, right? That's it in a nutshell. Most people don't want to try because it's their insecurities. And we have to just recognize that and meet people where they're at. But life won't give you the opportunities that you need. You have to be intentional to create them. And that's why it's one more try, one more try. I mean, the 4-minute mile, I've posted about that before. People didn't think it could ever be broken until it was broken. And then so many people who were probably trying and trying and trying got over that mental block that it could or couldn't be done. It could be done. It was done. And then they did it. And now the 4-minute mile is kind of a thing of the past. Now it's breaking it continually. So, and it just took that one person to get through that. So yeah. Good for what we do.
I will say one more thing. This is bleeding into a little bit of some professional development we did this week at school. We talked about setting the bar a little bit with students. And I thought about that even in terms of my business. We have to personally set our bar. And I think the key to this book that I could put on the front of this book to remember is right here on page 52. The key to the one more try is to be intentional. Where is your bar and what is your intentionality every day you sit in your office? So if your bar is 3 reach outs every day, 2 follow-ups every day, if it's your IPA, 1 personal growth, or if your bar is 3 joins a month, or if your bar is, whatever your bar is, be intentional about it. And I think that is a good way to look at it, because you can always go above the bar, but you got to have a bar and you got to have something to gauge your business with. And we talk about that like as teachers all the time with students. There's got to be a standard, and then you can always go above and beyond, but what is that standard? And I think that's a little bit what he's talking about here, and waking up each day and being intentional about reaching that bar, and getting in the habit of that. And then that one more try can maybe even be above it if you want it to be.
I love that. That's super good, Kristen. Thank you for that. What do you ladies think? Are you feeling like we've hashed through chapter 3 pretty thoroughly, or did anyone else have anything they wanted to add before we move on to chapter 4?
I was just thinking, one more try really comes down to mindset. Like whether we're talking about it for our team or we're talking about it just ourselves in our IPAs or whatever, like it's called one more try. It's not called one more perfection, it's a try. And it comes down to the fact that if I'm afraid that I'm not going to succeed, or I'm afraid that I'm not going to make it work or whatever, then I'm probably not as willing to try. But if I believe that I can achieve, then I'm a lot more willing to put myself out there and try something. And I think that is probably what I see the most with my team, is that, the ones that they're not willing to listen to how I'm asking them to take the products, or they're not willing to, listen to the education or whatever. And I think it is mindset. And I also think that it is a little bit heartbreaking especially because we're talking about people who, their health journey, their life, the hope that they have has really been, they've tried and tried and tried. So many people have tried and tried and tried and tried. And they don't have one more try in them, but it's up here, So just, Kristen, like you were said, just not just being intentional with giving it one more try, but being intentional to build that belief, help build that belief in people too.
Absolutely. So good, Lisa. I'm so glad you chimed in with that. Anybody else for chapter 3?
I just wanted to turn my light on. So the one on page 40 that stuck out to me was the when you act and do the same things as everyone else, you'll get the same results as everyone else. When you implement a one more try mentality, that's where you'll find your greatest success and your most significant personal growth. So it just resonated with me. Started and highlighted it a couple of times. So
Yeah. That was one of my favorites too, Becky, for sure. That one really stood out to me. And it seems like that's such a continuous theme in most of the books that we read, isn't it? It comes out in some way, shape, or form. So I love it. All right, ladies.
Okay, I just have to say,
go ahead, Jacqueline.
can you hear me, Susie?
Yeah.
I think on the last page of this chapter, when you hide from one more try, all you're doing is disguising your insecurities. Like that was just like a sucker punch to the chest, because I think it's really true, right? Like we're fearful of so many different things. I mean, you can list them all out, all of our fears that stop us from reaching out or type of event or reaching out to our chicken listers. And we run away from that, and kind of justify it or just avoid it, but it's really just disguising all of those insecurities. So I love that he called that out. Because yeah, I mean, if there was one thing that was kind of a recurring theme in people that I spoke with this past week, is it's the personal growth and getting over your own insecurities and fears and really working on your mindset. And that's when people finally started having breakthroughs in their business. So yeah, we got to stop running away from doing what we need to do. I think in the okay, I'm going to say one more thing. The top of 49, where he says, I found that most people are tired from too little activity instead of too much activity. And high degrees of activity produce energy, right? When we're in momentum, things seem to feel easier. It's more fun when we're in momentum and you feed off that energy. But just like batteries, if you don't use your energy, you tend to lose it over time, right? And it's harder to get back into momentum if we're not continually taking that action. So I absolutely love that. So yeah, when you use your energy, that produces even more energy. He nails it so right on the head with that.
So glad you brought both of those things up, Jacqueline, because those are two of the things that are in my notes. I'm like, I gotta stop talking. So I'm so glad you brought those up, because those are big highlights for me too. So glad that you mentioned that. Thank you. All right, ladies. Well, let's move on to chapter 4. This was called One More in the 5 Principles of Time Management. I thought this chapter was very interesting, and it definitely gave me a new perspective of time and just how to use it. He touched on the difference between mind time and clock time. Mind time is what the speed of time feels like, and that's different for everyone. Everyone's perception of that is very different based on their life experiences or other myriad of factors, where, then the clock time is just that regular chronological time that's measured by a clock that we would think of. So I thought it's very interesting too, that he says, time really is more valuable than money, because money is replenishable, but time is not. It's really finite. You don't get replays. When it's gone, it's gone. And, this is just so important, because your relationship to time and how you use your time can just really profoundly affect how far and where you go in life. So just to quickly break down those 5 principles of time management for a quick review for us all. Number 1, he said, add more days to your day. Who thought it was super interesting that he talked about dividing your day basically into 3 mini days. I was like floored by that. I'd never even considered something like that, because he says when you consider those shorter days, then your mind just automatically believes that each minute is that much more valuable. So essentially your sense of urgency is just operating a higher level. And so I love that illustration of, when we sense that the finish line is closer, more of what we do becomes a sprint. So I just thought that was super interesting. So he said, by doing this, you're going to move faster. You're going to have greater control over your time ultimately. And isn't that what we all want? Second, approach time with a greater sense of urgency. So these two really tied together, but he did say that urgency is absolutely key, because there's just a direct correlation between how fast you're going to run versus how close you are to the finish line. Because really a different mindset is required to do your best when you know that your finish line is closer. So you think about that. Like if you have a goal that you think is really far-fetched and far away, we tend to just more jog toward that goal, versus when we feel like it realistically might be right in front of us, we're going to do more of a sprint to get there. The third principle, learn how to control time instead of time controlling you. When you manage your time with a sense of urgency, you become the master instead of the servant. And then you also have a greater say in what you think is important. So ultimately, we're going to do is spend more time on what's meaningful or rewarding to you. He talked about paying super close attention to that first 30 minutes of your day, because what you kind of focus your thoughts on essentially can set the tone for your whole day, of whether you feel like you're the one controlling your day, or you feel like, it's the world or your day controlling you. So I love that. Fourth, measure your performance often. Where your performance is measured, your performance often improves. And we talk about this all the time with tracking our IPA, just different ways that we can be tracking our performance. Because if you don't take the time to measure, you're going to have a lot more difficult time, correcting your course. If you're doing the same thing over and over again and not really realizing that's not necessarily getting you closer where you want to go, it's going to take a whole lot more time to get yourself back on track if you are not taking the time to check your map. Okay. He says, learn how to identify not only your weaknesses, but the potential sources of those weaknesses. I thought that was also really interesting. Also thought it was interesting that he doesn't necessarily talk about just, he says top performers do measure themselves monthly or weekly, but if you're one more thinker, you actually will do that process daily. I thought that was very interesting. And it makes sense. You're not going to know if you're on the right course if you're not checking your progress consistently. And then the fifth principle is to focus on the future. So you don't want to get stuck in the past, because it really kills your ability to be productive in the present. And it really then robs you of making plans for your future. I like how he talked about how the past can really be a thief and steal your ability to dream and imagine. And I think about maybe patterns that we've been stuck in, whether it's really hard financial patterns or whatever it may be. If we're like living in the past and that part of our identity, it's going to really hold us back from able to see something different for ourselves, to think that something is even possible, to be different in our lives. So he said, you need to spend time thinking about your future, because that's where you're heading. You also need to stay connected to your present, because that's how you build a better future. So those were some of my big takeaways. I had a couple more things, but in the interest of time, I am going to turn it over to you ladies again. What were your thoughts on this chapter?
Really
I
good.
just had, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, really good for those people who, and I'm speaking to myself, who need to time block, and time blocking intentionally in the way he talks about it really helps to create. You want to look at your time and your IPA and what you need to do when we talk about time freedom, we talk about it in terms of that person is doing the exact same amount of work as, let's say, a silver and a diamond. They're doing the same amount of work, but the diamond has learned to do their work intentionally, habitually, in a manner that frees them up, where a silver may not have learned how to do the same things in a way that, when you're building your business in that very beginning, holy cow, you feel like you're working your business 24/7, don't you? Your business is working you and not you working your business. And so if, in the process of learning, you learn how to work the same day that a silver works, let's say 8 to 5, you're working it in 8 to noon and you're done for the day. You've done the same amount. You've done it intentionally. You've cut out all of the junk that you don't need to do, that you're spinning in circles. Super important to manage your time, or your time will manage you, for sure. Very good wake up call indeed.
Agree. This reminded me of the winning day, that we talked about, the winning day recipe. I tell you, I have been being very intentional about using that recipe. And I tell you, ladies, I am getting so much more work done because I've got these increments of time. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do here. And I go over on some of my windows if I have the time to do that. But I'm just finding, my goodness, I'm just pounding out a lot more work than I did, but I'm being very intentional about like planning ahead. I know who I'm reaching out to. I'm not, it's just amazing. So I kind of feel like that's one of my quote mini days in my day now, is my winning day. And I've just found it to be extremely helpful. So, but because there is that urgency, I think having that block of recognizing I'm going to try to put this in 2 to 3 hours, there's that urgency, and it does really help.
You create the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't ever managing your day and you're never time blocking, you have no finish line, and you run aimlessly toward what? At least with the winning the day and creating that finish line, you're running toward that goal of finishing, and you are creating that rush, replicating the rush every single day of running toward that finish line. I'm a to-doer. I have to check things off my list. If I don't have things to check off in my day just kind of runs and runs and runs. So I need to be very intentional about how I use my time.
Lisa, did you have something that you were going to chime in there about this chapter?
I was just looking, it kind of goes along with Sarah, what you were saying on page 60. It's not that people approach life with a lack of vision that causes them to fail. It's a type of vision they call on to get them across the finish line. And I think as I am growing, what that vision looks like, it changes as your business does. But that just kind of struck me, what vision am I heading for? What's pulling me to the finish line or pushing me to the finish line or whatever. So that, and then just kind of a reiteration of what we hear often on page 65. He says, one more, thinkers have the innate ability to spend time dreaming and imagining about the future while taking action. So just a good reminder we can't just sit around and dream all the time. We have to be taking action, or that dream is just a hope, or a wish, I guess.
So good. Thank you, Lisa. Anybody else from chapter 4?
I know that on page 61, where under the control the time instead of controlling you, and he talks about how do you start your day? What's your first 30 minutes about? And it seems like in today's world, especially with technology, the first thing is the phone. People check their phone, check their emails, and yes, I use my phone first thing, but I go to my devotions on my phone first thing. And I don't know, I know, I think almost everybody on here is a Christian, so, or believes in God. So I think a lot of us start our day that way. And on days where it gets missed, it seems like the whole day is messed up. Does anybody else feel that way? I think that he's got that really, what do you really do in those first 30 minutes?
That's so true. I definitely know my days go a lot more smoothly when I'm focusing on the right thing. I think the first I try to have in my mind every day when I wake up is gratitude. Like, thank you for another day. Whatever this looks like, I just thank you for it. And so it really does make a difference to set the tone, I think, for your day, for sure.
I was actually just thinking this morning that I needed to get a different like little computer or something, because when this computer comes out, if I left Plexus open, or I left, my time block app open, or, whatever, then when I get up in the morning to sit with Jesus, my mind easily goes to all of these other things. And I was just thinking, like, man, I just need where, like, if this is going to be, work stuff, that I just have a better, more intentional way of, focusing my 30 minutes in the morning, or my first 30 minutes or whatever. And also, Sarah, when you said, do we go to the phone or the throne first thing? The throne, the only thing I thought was toilet. So I don't think that's really how you meant that, but like, that's what I thought.
It's
This business,
of our
it could
work.
be interpreted that way.
only Plexus people would go there, right?
I
That
truly
was
meant
a
the throne
pun.
of God, but yes,
No,
you
you did.
interpret that however.
That is so great. I love it.
Hilarious.
I know it's starting to get a little bit later, so I totally understand if anyone needs to hop off, but was there any thoughts, or maybe anyone who hasn't chimed in yet tonight that would like to share one of their takeaways before we get ready to sign off? We need to sign off before Sarah falls asleep. Any closing thoughts? Or are we good? Last call. All right. Well, I really appreciate all of the discussion. It was excellent as always. Looking forward to next week, chapters 5 and 6, I believe. So we will see you then. I hope you all have a good night.